Hello, thinkers. Welcome back to the Apex Mind. This is another episode of the Apex Arena. Actually, it's a part two of the What is Morality conversation I had with Vivaswan. And in part one, we discussed morality and we stressed it apart. We also discussed utilitarianism, we discussed a bunch of other theories. This time around, we discussed deontology, we discussed contractualism, and again a bunch of more theories. I think the error theory was also discussed in this particular episode. So if you also want to have such kind of discussion with me, all you need to do is just send me a mail at my email address and I'll get back to you and we can have that discussion, we can have that debate, and you can just have a communication channel with me. So I hope you enjoy this part of the conversation, this part of the discussion, this part of the debate, and let's get going. It can because they thought that they were saving society by killing heretics and women who are practicing black magic. That is what they believed when women were simply trying to practice an advanced science, right? So then you are going to say no, but what they understood was wrong. Now you're appealing to objectivity. Now you're talking about it was objectively wrong and you are now outside of the virtue ethical framework. So I don't think virtue ethics can necessarily be applied to society, at least as we understand it right now. I'll like dive deeper into it because it is a central argument. So virtue ethics are also removed. We've removed utilitarianism. Now let's talk about another form of ethical, normative ethical standard, which is deontology.
Yes, I mean, it's one of my favorite, and I am not someone who very strongly agrees with deontology. Rather, I was almost agreeing till about 2 3 days ago. I was thinking about it, but now I have switched my stance to something that I call emotivist contractualist, right? So that is what I am right now, and I was an emotivist deontologist a few days ago. Now, that basically, let's talk about deontology. It was given by Immanuel Kant, and in his, I think, book, the name was Best Metaphysics for Morality, something like that. But so, what he basically says is that take an action, and if it achieves the maxim, then it is a good thing, right? So he has kept this filter. Now, what is that maxim? Maxim is just if you take an action and you apply it universally. You imagine a world where everyone is doing that action, and if that is justified, if everyone is doing that is maximizing something, then that action is good. So basically, that's the idea of deontology: is that you take an action, you apply it, and see if everyone did it, would it be better? Therefore, it is good.
But
If
would
it
it be
is,
better according to
just
what?
destroying the society, what?
Then I mean, he says that you take an action, you apply it to a theoretical world in which everyone is doing that action, and if that
Hmm.
appeals to you, if you think that is good, then it
Yes.
achieves the maximum. That is still emotivism at the end of the day, right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
You feel that it is good.
That's why, because I have always chosen to be an emotivist, but because I thought of emotivism as not a worldview but as a descriptive,
Yeah.
just thing. Therefore, I had to have some kind of normative ethical theory to just ground that emotivism and say that, okay, this is the truth that expressions are just sorry morality is just expressions. Now what I should do, and to just regulate that which appeals to my emotion,
Right.
right?
So
If
you
that
already
is
had
the
the descriptive understanding. Now you're trying to find the prescription. Like, how do you prescribe
Yes,
things?
yes. So I went to deontology and I just saw a circular reasoning. Okay, I understood that, if I applied it, then it is good and then it is bad. But how do I find out that if everyone does it, let's say there is murder action X. So I apply it to the entire world, everyone is murdering each other. How do I know if that is good or bad? That is ultimately to my emotions. So
Right. But
because I saw that,
if we simply consider deontology as a prescriptive or normative ethical standard, which is appealing to the description of emotivism, does can it not function then? Like it can simply be like you should act in a world that you should do an action on the basis of whether or not if everyone in the world is when they do it, you will find it good. So your what do you call, your central engine running is emotivism, yes, but your hands that are making it like doing the actions are uh, Norbit
Deontology.
deontology. So is it circular or is it simply appealing to emotivism?
Uh, yeah, actually, this is the problem because when we see this, we kind of look at emotivism. Yes, of course, it appeals to me, and therefore I like it. I like this world, and therefore this action is good. But deontology, I think, does not give again the problem, which is the most important, the is to ought problem. It does not solve again that this is good and therefore I ought to do that. Even if we consider emotivism, it does not tell me why I should do that, even if I like it. So liking and appealing to emotions is a fact, but telling someone that you ought to do or you ought not to do is something that is a prescriptive force. And so I think deontology does not, it actually gives me a very good reason why to call certain things to be good or bad, but it does not give me good reasons to obligate them to certain people. So, I think a better work in that obligation in a prescriptive way is done by contractualism.
I understand. I'll get to contractualism because after you sent me the list of the things that we were going to discuss, I looked into contractualism, and that is probably going to be how I'm centrally going to argue with the veganism, because I think contractualism plus emotivism is what is going to work against his particular stance. But one thing that I was very interested in is the is to what problem is something that is the biggest hurdle in ethics. Uh,
Yes.
how about this? So, uh, is emotivism is how you feel, right? It's still an is. It's not an art. Emotivism simply describes that
Yes.
whether something feels good or something feels bad to a particular person. Now, maybe the point of emotivism to deontology pipeline is that you take multiple ises, right? Is you have like five ises, and you sort them into what should be done, what ought to be done. So ought is the process of deciding among x number of is, which is are you is something that appeals to you on the basis of rationality. For example, murder feels wrong when everyone else would also do it, and that is why I should not do murder, or I should prescribe murder not to be done. Versus a world where no one. I mean, this is confusing, but yes. So the filtering process of is to apply it onto the world is the ought or should.
Well, I don't think I got it clearly, but this is what I think what you said. You basically said that we take all the issues when you understand certain things by your own emotions, and then you prescribe. But the thing is that I cannot just prescribe things that I think to others, right? So that is the main problem. I can say for myself that I ought to do these things. That is because ought itself
Ah,
can be
I
an
got it.
emotion.
So it
Art
works.
itself can be an emotion. It can be working for me and very well for me, but I cannot obligate a murderer
Even
to say that
even
you
your
ought not
sorting
to do that.
process is contingent on your own emotivism at the end of the day.
Yes,
I get it.
and so even if I say that, then so what contractual? Let's go to contractualism now. Um, Contractualism is, I think, a new idea rather, and it's often considered by many philosophers as the strongest philosophical framework in metaethics. It was given by T.M. Scanlon. I don't know what he actually gave, but his book was what we owe to each other, right? That was the thing. Contractualism. The name itself refers to contract between something. So that is what it is. Contractualism is what we owe to each other, and how it solves is that he defines good as a principle that nobody can reasonably deny,
Okay,
right?
okay.
That is the principle that if there is a moral principle that no one can reasonably deny, then it is good.
So
And if anyone
inability to negate something defines good
inability to negate reasonably, yes. And
reasonably.
so
Yes.
if anyone reasonably neglects something, then it cannot be taken as that is universally applied. So that is basically contractualism. It deals with what we actually owe to each other, and how our goals can conflict with each other, and how can we sort them. And so how it solves the is to what problem is, I think, very interesting. uh, we have two preconditions here, the two assumptions, and I think they are very basic. They are like assumptions for any framework. The first assumption is that the agent we are talking about is a rational agent, right? That's the most basic premises.
Sure.
So that is the first thing. And then we go towards the second
Second,
premise.
yeah, got it. So the moment we sort someone, for example, a sociopath as an irrational agent, then we can say that therefore they cannot follow the contractual. Like what if they are doing it in a wrong manner? That is not the fault of the fault of the philosophy, but their own irrationality.
Yes, so that the first premise actually cuts off many things. So we cannot take irrational people, because irrationality, or basically unreasoned behavior, can justify literally anything. So we cannot take that into account. We have to take rational agents into account. So first premise is that we take rational agents. Second premise, or basically the second assumption, is that these agents have goals, or these agents have some ends that they want to do. And how I like to support this assumption is by just appealing to the basic fact that the fact that we are doing something is evident that we want to have something. Like, if we don't have, if you don't want anything, you will literally do nothing, and you will just sit, or you will suicide. You
Right.
will
Action is
have
proof of
to have
motivation.
something. Yes, you will have to have some motivation to actually do something, and therefore, I think the second assumption is justified. The first is rational agents, and they want to do something. Now,
Okay.
these are very basic ones, and so now we proceed to the argument that how it solves to the is to what problem. Now, there is, let's say, an agent A who wants to perceive something, and an agent B who wants to perceive the other thing, but their goals are conflicting. Now, of course, moral discourse of good and bad can only come when two conflicting behaviors are there, right? If you don't have conflicting behaviors, you cannot say that this thing is bad or this thing is good.
Okay.
So, because their goals are conflicting, now we have to have this into account, that the agent is rational, so he wants to rationally achieve his goal, right?
Right.
And now how can he do that if it is conflicting? And he says that, okay, it is conflicting, I will not do that. So he also wants to do that, and he doesn't want to do that. That's irrational. He is not rational. So to be rational, he has to go in accordance with some principles, at least, to make his presumed rational goal to be completed, right? If he wants it to be achieved, so he needs to have some principles. So
Right.
this is the where the ought comes in. So basically, the is sentence is that he wants to achieve something. That's a factual statement. Now, to achieve that and to not act irrationally, he ought to have some principles, because that's something that is obligatory to the rational person, that you have to have something at least to not be irrational. If you just say that, I also want to pick up that pen, but because there's a wall in between, I will not pick up. So both things cannot be in between. Either you have to, or basically either you want to pick up that pen, or you don't want to. If you don't want to, then the game is finished. But if you want to pick up that pen, then
You have
you
to act in a
ought
rational
to break
manner.
that wall.
The
So
the way that we can reasonably get to our goal will be the ought.
yes, because when you cannot do that, then I think it's irrational.
So
Basically,
so
you
so
cannot.
so
And
then morality or ought will be uh, reason applied onto desire. The moment you
yes.
apply reason onto desire, the process of doing that then could be uh, some form of morality.
Yes, we can say rather that principle, or what I said was that
Whatever rules
if
it
you
follows
want
in order to do that reasonably.
that you want to achieve that without conflicting with that and without being irrational, and therefore the principles which you harness to be rational are the moral principles, and
Hmm.
basically that's morality in contractualism. And good and bad, if we were to look at it definitionally, then uh, let me just pick up that. So good then is basically those principle whose adoption no agent can reasonably deny, and specifically it goes in, let's say, accordance with equal standing and unbiasedness, because unbiasedness again appeals to logic and rationality. And so that's the basic assumption. We have to solve this problem in order to get anywhere. So this is the basic thing of contractualism, and therefore I think it appeals to me because it has very minimal assumptions. I think these are not even assumptions. So I think that's purely justified. And one thing which I was trying to grapple with was,
So,
the thing which it struck that, okay, there is a person who is conflicting with your goals. Now, why don't you just kill that person, right?
because
That's
it's
also a
not
thing
the
in morality.
reasonable thing to do, I guess.
Yes, the first, the again thing comes in that that person can very reasonably reject your uh, principle of killing him. So
And
reasonable rejection.
what are we defining reasonability as then in this framework?
What do you mean?
I mean, see, I am not killing the person because it's not reasonable for me to kill someone to achieve my goal. Fine,
No, no,
okay.
no, no. It's not. He can reasonably reject. His
Okay,
entire
so
loss of agency would be a very large reason
reasonability
to
is
reject your own.
intersubjective also. Like you have to take into account them. Then morality will be a sort of negotiation that principles that both actors can agree upon, or how many number of moral agents they are. That in order to achieve everyone's goals, the principles that we can reasonably agree upon would then be morality.
Yes, but again, we have to look at that. It is always based on ethical emotivism.
Yeah, and again, yes. So the core of it is, I think, the description of how we find something good or wrong is on the basis of our emotions, on how we what we feel. While on the other hand, when it comes to functionally how morality, therefore, that feeling good and feeling bad work, is that uh, we have goals and we have the power of reasoning, and we are people who all have different goals and our own power of reasoning, so we will have to intersubjectively act, and uh, there will be certain principles that govern how we will intersubjectively act on the basis of our goals and our emotions and our capability, and to what do you call, the bridge the gap between our goals and our emotions, the reasoning that we use will then be called morality, I guess, as a
Yes, of course. Um, because it's like anyone can just come up to you and say that, why can you just say that without those principles, can you do that? So, my argument there would be that without those principles, you cannot actually do anything, because it is, I think, very clear. We have two conflicting opinions, or basically two conflicting goals, and each of the person we are considering to be rational, and that person just cannot say that I want to achieve it, but I don't want to achieve that because of that conflicting opinions. So that would be very irrational to do and not do at the both at the same
got it.
time.
so
So
so th-
rather,
so
if he has to do, then he ought to have some principles that would keep even the other rational happy and let it not conflict. And when it happens, that principle is what morality is, and that is what good and bad
Got it.
can
So
be
if
derived from.
so we have motives, we have desires, or we have goals. So we have goals and we have emotions on how we feel, good or bad, about things, right?
Hmm.
And the reasoning process is what bridges the gap between the two of them, and the process by which reasoning bridges the gap between the two of them is called morality.
Yes.
Okay,
The
that works.
as we define morality, as you in the starting one itself, you said that morality is just distinguishing or talking about good and bad. So
Right.
that right and wrong and good and bad is all done by ethical emotivism. But to functionally apply that in a meaningful way, in a way that is adhered to logical principles, is by morality, is by this ethical framework that we call
And then we
contractualism.
can define ethics as the formalized form of that, right? All of
Hmm.
us are
Yes.
acting on the basis of our emotivism and our goals, and we're doing it in a reasonable manner. And when all of us act, we can derive certain x number of principles on how most people therefore act given those premises, and then we can codify that into a book, let's say, or write it down, and that will be the ethical standard for that society.
Hmm. Yes.
So that
By the
that
way,
can also explain how it changes with time also, right? Because our emotivism changes. Certain after a point we started finding slavery wrong within our feelings, and then we started seeing them also as other subjects. The intersubjectivism also expanded, so the reasoning sorted it out to be the wrong thing to do, slavery, and therefore the it changed because emotivism changed and subjects changed.
yes, but the core principles of pain and pleasure will always stay the same.
Always remain,
They are
yes.
objectively true. Uh, now, I don't know what are you actually going to debate, but what are your stance on veganism? Are you against or are you with it, or what are you actually going to do?
Okay, like I'll give you a general overview of what I understand, right? So I think the world is going to slowly shift into veganism anyway. That's kind of an inevitability, simply because
Hmm.
it's much more cost effective for the billion-dollar or trillions of dollars of companies that are like trying to mint profits, right? So they're ultimately
Hmm.
going to push towards laboratory manufactured food. So it's a given, right? It's harder to have animals, so it is going to happen, yes, as an inevitability, I agree. Secondly, I think vegan ethics are not very clear, right? They are again uh, emotivism is what they're trying to influence also within people, by the way, right? The way that they function in order to convert people to emotivism is by appealing to their emotions, trying to change
Uh,
their emotive stance, and then once you change the emotive stance, the reasonability also ends up changing, right? Within people, their goals change the moment you change the emotive nature of it all. That is what they're trying to do, and they're trying to pass it off as a moral realistic stance, right? They believe they stand on the axiom that suffering of sentient beings is wrong, but they don't necessarily have any reason why sentience is the cutoff point, or where you exactly draw the lines of sentience. I've asked some say it's central nervous system, some say something else. So it's not a very, like, at least for in practice, veganism is not very thorough with its ethics. Perhaps like there are people who are more thorough, but I don't see it as a very thorough stance, personally speaking. I think it's a what do you call, it's an empathetic stance, yes, but in the goal of trying to signal virtue and do the right thing, it neglects realities of people, it neglects individual actors, and it uh, turns a blind eye to certain poverty cases, certain malnutrition cases, all in an attempt to be more virtuous themselves, if that makes sense. It's highly, that is why it is actually very in alignment with virtue ethics, because to them it is the right action to convert people to veganism. They do not care, to them it's a small deal, right? If I have to pay 50 rupees for a milk, as compared to, let's say, for a vegan milk I have to pay 150 rupees, they're like, it's just 100 rupee difference, a cow's life is being saved. Yes, from your perspective that is cool, but think about it, how it's going to impact my budget, my standard of living, what education I can afford, how I can treat my children, how much I can invest. A lot of factors in my life is going to be affected by how expensive and how available is my food. So that is often neglected in they sort of draw a false equivalence between animals and human beings when they're trying to talk to people, but when you question them on it, then they're like, no, they're not equal. So I can't just pin down their ethical stance completely beyond the fact that it is motivated by virtue ethical standards and that it is highly emotive reasoning based.
Okay, I personally don't think that there is a good argument against veganism. But because I am myself not a vegan, therefore I don't like to actually debate against non-vegans. But what I would say is that because I myself consider actually objectively that humans and other animals are equal, and because I've seen, I think one of my friends, he asked me a question, and I think, do you know someone known as Arvind, animal activist?
No, 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 I don't know him.
He's a vegan and he's actually an animal activist,
Right.
and so he is doing debates right now with certainly many kind of people. And so a question which was asked to him was, I think, very interesting. So let's have two parts or two perspectives of that question. So the question basically was that if there is a chimpanzee, right? There is a chimpanzee baby, and there is a human baby burning in the house. Whom would you save, right? And so, of course, from intuitionist reasoning and all those things, we would certainly say that the human baby is more important.
Right.
And this anthropocentric view is embedded in us so much so that no one even thinks before answering. So,
Right.
what I think is that even though my own answer also would be that I would save a human being, but I don't think that it is objectively true that they are equal, which means that, sorry, I don't think that they are objectively unequal, which means that if you ask the same question to the chimpanzee, he will say that I would save the chimpanzee. So the question is not about who is more valuable, rather what we as human beings actually, kind of to ourselves. Being a human, it is, I think, a wrong question to ask a human being itself to, whom would you save? Because he does not know the perspective of other animals. If you
Right.
ask the same question to the chimpanzee, he will say that chimpanzee.
But the
So
problem it ends up being is that veganism is asking human beings to value animal life, right? It is not asking universally, or it is not imposing a universal standard on all beings to value all lives.
Because we are objectively saying that, let's say, were we they are objectively saying that, if humans and animals are equal, then we don't have any reasonable, actually thing to say that, let's kill someone whom we can't even reasonably say that they are unequal to us. Of course, I'm not saying about those people who are very, underprivileged and very poor, and they are in Gaza and they are in Palestine and Israel, and they are saying that, vegans are not saying that even those people should give up. They are saying that just to minimize animal killing,
Right.
uh, because even we can just take 200 rupees and live a very healthy life in a vegan diet. So, with that in mind, I don't think there is even, okay, there can be actually philosophical
Yeah.
reasoning that can actually destroy veganism, because we discussed right now the is to ought problem, and I think very probably that there are very few people that know how to solve this is to ought problem.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
what you can do actually is that just, blast the bomb on that vegan is a vegan. So you can ask him that, okay, animal killing is bad, I agree, but why I ought not to eat that? So because that is almost unsolvable unless you have read some philosophical books which are very selectively present, you can always just, corner him and, actually say that, of course, veganism is not that, because you cannot draw an ought from an is.
Yeah, Definitely, it's annoying because of, again, the problem that I have with. I mean, I think the only line of reasoning that they can say is that to like reduce universal suffering as much as we can. Maybe that is what they can argue with. Because I always do question them on why are you still killing mosquitoes then? Why are you still killing plants then? If like life is of equal value, and some people argue sentience, other people argue suffering, so they're like, it's not like I can uh, erase suffering, right? Some suffering ends up just like being there, but as much as I can, maybe I should. That is probably what
That's
they.
also what I think.
Right, but then the question ends up being, okay, you're, let's say, not killing farm animals, right? But as the load of people wanting to eat more vegetarian or vegan food increases, then more plants are technically going to die, more mosquitoes are technically going to die, more rodents are technically going to die. So would you say a plant life is then less valuable than a animal life? And the moment that you make that distinction, then I can like make it into a gradient of what is more valuable, and then human life ends up becoming the most valuable.
Yes, you can, but we can have three possible distinctions here. So, if we just conjoin all of them, then we can answer to this. So, first, we can just say that sentience is a important here thing, because sentience is
Suffering doesn't matter
like
for
uh,
beings that cannot feel suffering.
yes. So, like for example, if I hug a plant or just kiss it, it will never have a distinction between me kissing and hugging and just cutting it down. It will have no distinction. So because
But the
that is the
question,
thing, and
I I did have a question. I just came up with like the suffering thing. So suffering, or let's say pain, it's a signal that they get to the body. Why? Because beings strive to exist, right? A plant does try to strive to exist. Even if you, let's say, cut down its branch, it'll try to heal itself so that it does exist. So the
yes.
feeling or the of suffering, is that the more important part, or is not going against a life's desire to exist the main point? Even if they cannot feel pain, for example, they still strive to live, right? You're going against that striving.
Yes, because but pain is, I think, more important, because pain is just like, for example, why do we have pain? And it can very logically be, suffice that plants do not ever feel pain. Because I and my father also had a very like colliding debate on. He said that of course plant may feel pain, we don't understand, but I think it's a very clear thing that the reason why we or any animal has pain
Mm-hmm.
is that if it has pain or it experiences pain, then it should go away from it. Locomotion is the main thing, that is, a factor that is main important in pain. If you have pain and you cannot move from that place, then what is the reason of that pain? So pain will never evolve in plants, and so the reason why pain is there in rats and all the other organisms like us, we can move away from the place where we are getting pain.
But what's the
So
purpose of pain? Why does pain exist? Pain exists so that you can like they can know that their existence is being what do you call harmed, or they are going to not exist, so that they can avoid it, right? So pain is a
Yeah,
signal
so
of
ultimately it becomes
non-existence, which is
to
wrong,
ultimately
essentially.
it becomes to striving for existence.
Yes. So if you
But
go
the
against
same thing
something's
it applies
existence,
to
isn't
human
that
beings.
wrong then?
No, because the same thing applies to human beings, right? Because we also have to at least exist. So because we also have to exist, we ought, or we basically have to. It's not that we are, or the vegan people are trying to just end the killing. They are wanting to minimize it as much as possible. And I think it's of course better to say that I will. Kill these many plants for not only my taste pleasure, but at least I want to live, and that's the reason I will have to kill this organism.
Okay, an interesting question, right?
And
So
now killing the pig is not.
yeah, I'm just going to ask. So there is a particular condition, psychological, I think a physiological condition, in which someone cannot feel pain at all from birth. They lack the ability to feel pain. So if that person is
Yes.
standing in front of you, and let's say a chicken is standing in front of you, a regular chicken, and you have to kill one of them, who are you going to kill?
Well, I said again, this is a wrong question to ask me. I would of course say the human being.
Yeah, you would say the human being, but what do you think is that? an intuitive stance for most people? Is that an applicable stance for most people?
It is an intuitive, of course, but not objectively true.
Mm, yeah, I mean, I think, and that is my stance, is that pain is a signal for threat to existence, and whether or not something can suffer doesn't matter, because the point is everything strives to exist. And
Yes.
when you go against its striving to exist is when you are like doing a wrong thing, I guess, universe objectively speaking. So in that sense, whether or not plants can feel a particular sort of pain that beings with central nervous system can wouldn't matter, because you are still ending something's existence, right? It's equal in that sense. If everything is equal because everything has existence, then ending one existence is the same as ending another existence, unless you again
Uh,
draw a gradient, and then things get more complicated.
what I say is not because that every living being is equal. I don't have a reasoning for pain and or striving for existence. I have the reason because of the evolutionary tree. That is the same evolution that has brought us to living in a building or to driving a car is the same evolution that has brought a plant to just live in front of me. So in that context, I am saying that it is objectively as equal as I am, although I subjectively may not feel that it is as valuable as a human being or a pig, let's say a plant.
Right,
So
right, right.
uh,
I'm simply saying, if we
so
can like equate all existence to be equal in value, then if I
mm,
can
objectively, not
yeah,
subjectively.
if let's say, if I stop, let's say, the production of a billion animals, and for that I have to plant a trillion trees who I will have to kill, then the trillion trees ends up becoming more wrong, because it is more existences that I am going to extinguish.
No, it's like breaking a rock. It
But tree
doesn't
is different
matter
from a rock.
whether.
Tree is living. Tree is striving to exist. That is the reason it grows roots. That is the reason it goes up to the sun. That is the reason it grows fruits. Everything. That is it's striving to exist. It produces seeds so that it can exist more.
Yes, but it does not have consciousness, right? It does not have a sentience in the sense that it
At
actually
least the way,
wants to
at least
live.
it's
It's
not
just a
similar to
cellular
our own
apparatus
sentience, right?
working according to its own
It's
DNA.
its sentience might not be similar to our own sentience that is based on our central nervous system, but it does exist and it strives to exist. Those are two given parameters. It is living and it strives to exist. Then if we say that we should save animals because they're more similar to us, then again it's not objective. It's simply that they're subjectively similar to us because what do you call they're closer to us. Then it is anthropocentric rather than it being a universal stance. It doesn't matter, right? Maybe there is a universally it wouldn't matter whether something is has a nervous system or whether it is alive like a plant. It's still in existence and it's still striving to exist.
Yes, but I think I have 2 points that are the use of the word striving. It's not as striving as we are, right? So not even as an ant. It so let's simplify this to the core. Tree, it wants to live. It does not want to live like I want to live or any else animal wants to live, which is sentient. It just lives in the sense that some chemical processes just follow and it becomes larger and larger. So that's just happening as a just as a result of some chemical processes which are happening, and it is just growing. So it does not have that will, or the word striving can be used
That's
as with
problematic
some
again.
animals as which
Bec-
have that will of living.
how do we
It
know
does not
that
have that will of.
animals have a particular will? By the fact that they do locomotion. That is again, then we're looking at it from an anthropocentric lens, right? Because I feel the will to live, and I see somewhat similar beings like a dog who does similar things to me. I assume it has the will, but I don't assume the plant has a will. Maybe it also does have a will. I just simply cannot understand it.
But that would be kind of a speculation, just because. And
I
again, that
understand it, but
salt and this example can be applied here.
isn't the point of ethics to err on the side of caution? right? Universally speaking, it makes more sense to assume that they have a will to live rather than to assume they don't have a will to live.
Philosophically, but scientifically does not, because again,
Yeah,
that
again, but
example of
ethics is a matter of philosophy
that.
anyway, right?
No, because sentience and their wanting to live is not a philosophical; it's a scientific question. Again, if I were to give that same dish and salt example,
Hmm.
so you cannot actually say that they have a will or they want to live, they strive for existence in a way that I don't understand. That must not be the case, because again, the salt and dish example, the taste only comes when the salt is there. I don't say that that taste must have come from somewhere I don't understand. It would have come from the salt itself, because that's the only thing which I added. So the fact that that we have distinction, that this is a plant which does not have that nervous system. Here is a rat which has that nervous system, and now if I hit the rat, it will run, it will just do some actions which the plant does not do, because it does not have that the central nervous system or the nervous system as a whole. So,
Touchy nuts, for
and there's no
example.
reason for the plant.
Yeah, plants evolve
What?
in certain ways so that they are not harmed. For example, right? They develop poisonous berries. They develop barks that are going to hurt the animals. Right? They develop all sorts of things so
Hmm.
that they are not harmed. So is that not proof of will?
No, that is not the proof of sentience, which most of the vegans, or at least reasonable vegans, are
Again,
talking about.
sentience is okay. Sentience, I'll give you that, right? At least the way that we understand sentience, it requires a central nervous system. But the will to live is still very much present within plants as well, right?
Will to
It
live is present in any organism in the planet, but
Yes,
it's
yes,
not
yes.
as
So if
being
the will
prescribed.
to live or the will to exist is there, then is it not morally, or do we not consider snuffing away that will to live to be wrong?
But don't you think that you're killing less plants when you're a vegan than you're a non-vegan?
That again, that is then what do you call? uh, Empirical thing, right? We'll have to look at the studies and the data. And if the planet were to hypothetically turn all vegan, how many plants in total we are going to kill? And if the planet doesn't turn all vegan, then how many plants plus animals we are going to kill? And whichever has the larger number is going to be the more morally wrong way to go about things. I think that works.
Yes, because let's say even if we consider killing plants immoral because of ending their strive for existence, then we can say that okay, I'm a vegan and I am killing these many plants so that I want to eat. But then when I am a non-vegetarian, I'm also eating those plants, let's say 4 to 5 days in a week, and 2 to 3 days in a week, I am eating, let's
I
say,
get it.
pork, beef, or.
I get that. I'm saying if all life is equated, then we'll have to look at the numbers, right?
Yes,
Whoever
and
does it
the
more.
numbers will literally show that the plant world is less killing in plants.
Okay, if there is empirical, I'm going to say this. If there is empirical data that in a vegan world, in total, less number of living beings are going to die as compared to this world, then we can say that it is a more moral world. I think I can give you that.
But statistically, I think it is very clear that it is the thing, that it is the case that less number of plants are going to be killed. Because just imagine, there are 400 billion chickens, pigs, and cows that are to be feeded,
They
and then.
feed. I understand the logistics of it all. The thing is, I have like read sort of conflicting data on this, but yeah, like we can at least say that if we can prove empirically within the veganistic framework of life mattering or like will to live mattering, then it makes more sense to strive towards a world where the number of beings being killed will be less. It doesn't matter what kind of being it is. It is the lesser evil of the
And
two.
so, would you consider, just not as a universal applicability, just as your personal thing, that okay, let's forget the world. How many animals or how many plants do I kill? Now, don't you think that if you shift towards a plant-based diet, you personally would kill less number of, just striving existent beings?
I don't. I mean, when you participate in a system of killing, by benefiting from it, you are indirectly participating in it, but you're not directly responsible for the killings themselves, right? Then that is the reason for a non-vegan stance. I'll take the, what do you call, the contractualism stance, in the sense that what is most reasonable for me to do. It's not most reasonable for me to kill an animal, but it's reasonable for me to, let's say, buy a dozen eggs from the supermarket. It's a different thing for me altogether.
But don't you think it's morally better to not even indirectly engage in that activity?
It will depend on if it fulfills my goals, right? And if it is emotively
Any,
fine for me. It's
it's like
emotively
very
fine for me.
scientifically obvious. Any
It's
goal of any
emotively fine for
biological
me
need
simply
can be
because,
fulfilled.
again, I don't feel the ick when I go from the supermarket, and it fulfills my goal of having a strong and nutritious body. So, in that framework, it makes sense. Buying from the supermarket, at least. It will be a different thing for people who are actually performing the acts of killing and artificial insemination and all of that.
No, no, no. I was saying that your your wanting to live in a strong body can, like, it's very scientifically obvious that plant food can easily suffice that need of whatever animal gives you from a plant-based diet. It's very obvious, and like
It's not accessible
it's
to people.
actually
That's
yes,
the
but
main thing.
you are not a person who is living in a very isolated place and you are very like poor. But of course, we can switch to that.
I'm saying, see, whether someone buys eggs from the supermarket or someone buys broccoli for the supermarket, in the descriptive model of, what do you call, morality that we agreed, emotivism, it's the same damn thing to them, and the goals that they're achieving are similar to them by doing both the things. So in that model, for that individual actor, it wouldn't make sense to uh, pick either of them. They can pick whatever it, but it will be a matter of questioning for the one who's killing, or the one who's propagating that system, the people at the top and the people or the workers who are responsible for the killings. For them you can make that argument, but not for someone who's buying it at the grocery store. You cannot, in that particular model, change their mind.
Let's say from an anthropocentric view, don't you think that even from an anthropocentric view, even let's say we consider humans are more valuable than animals, don't you think that changing to a vegan world would actually benefit human beings rather than just not benefiting them? Because we have seen that most of the
In terms of
problem that is
saving the
happening with
planet, I would
global
agree,
warming.
but not necessarily in terms of nutrition. I would say nutrition, we're still trying to make it so vegan foods do complement everything, right? I know a couple of vegans in my gym also. They have to take like quite a bit of supplements for XYZ thing, and it does cost them a lot. And it's obviously not as satiating as food, and there is the matter of different additives and all of that shit.
That can be a problem. Uh,
But yeah, I would
yes.
agree that if like the emotive rational argument that we had, like the what do you call, the emotive contractual argument, it can be used on the people who are establishing factories, or on the elites and on the workers, in a sense. Maybe you can establish it on that. I think the problem with vegan activism is that they're trying to take a bottom up approach, when the reality of the matter is only the real change, even ethically speaking, should come from the top.
But the top is motivated by the bottom.
I think at this juncture, and this is my personal opinion, right? I'm not like substantiating anything. Is that supply and demand concepts worked a couple of centuries ago? As we stand today in 2025, demand is artificially generated, it is artificially constructed, and they can manipulate it in a heartbeat. That is the kind of power they hold at this point. Sell people the propaganda today
So
that
you're saying
it's
that,
wrong according to their
okay, okay, I
scripture.
understand.
Yeah, so
So you're saying that it would have been worked, but nowadays it's like just a following idiot zombie. Like they just show you something and you get idiotically behind it. So basically, the audience is like that nowadays. That they will have something in the market and people will just go mad behind it, and they will
Exactly.
always borrow that. And
The
so
power is
that
not one to
demand
one
is
anymore between
supplied
supply
by
and
the
demand.
supply.
Yeah, the people who give the supply are the people who are generating false demand and manipulating demand as well. That is the issue. So it would have worked definitely a couple of 100 years of back, that if you were able to convince most people that we should eat vegan food, then the elites or whoever was running the factories will supply according to that. Now the case is, even if you, let's say, how many people can you individually change to veganism to have an impact, as compared to, let's say, if you huddle together and talk to the elites? The moment you revolt or do something which causes them to change their supply, is the moment that society itself will change. Hell, they can simply make, for example, vegan meat cheaper, a lot cheaper than animal meat. What do you think people on ground are going to pick then? They'll probably pick the cheaper option.
That can be a problem.
I think
Yes,
why
but I think
I
rather
don't think
than
it makes
going.
sense for uh, for anyone to have a more expensive vegan option and then be somehow compelled to choose it. Even if you convince one person, nine people are going to disagree, because it is not practically reasonable for, like, a society as a whole to all choose the more expensive option. I think most important is to create cheaper, more accessible vegan options, to improve the logistics, to improve the pricing, and you'll see a change in society much greater and much faster than any activism on ground can ever do.
I agree with the point of accessibility, because this was a point which was raised in that debate also. The activist was trying to put out the same problem that is asked, but the debater actually said that he was almost convinced that of course veganism is good. But the point which he raised was, I think, better than the vegan was trying to say. What he said is that sure, because he said that even if I become vegan, and if even if I try to propagate veganism, there is a kind of cult that is going on which will just say that okay, he is following veganism, therefore I will follow veganism. But the education that you need to actually follow veganism, in the sense that you will not get malnourished and all the bad things will happen to you, that will not be taken by most of the people. Just the idea that let's become vegan because more famous person is vegan, so that will be happening. And so he suggested that rather than just switching to veganism right away, what we can do is to first educate people about nutrition, and let it be from animal meat from anywhere, and then simultaneously we can put the option of veganism so that it becomes more nutritionally adaptive option.
Yeah.
So I thought of that as a very good option there. And accessibility, I agree, though I think that prices veganism is much more cheaper than non-vegetarianism.
I mean, on the ground, if you, let's say, trying to buy, I have gone to the supermarket, right? So vegan milk, just a minute. Yeah. So I was saying, vegan milk, I have seen it's like a lot more expensive. If, let's say, I can get 65 rupees per liter milk, I will get a vegan milk packet in, let's say, 150 rupees. And maybe I'm educated enough, or maybe, like, I am motivated enough to make that sacrifice. But how many times? And that is simply me. What about the billions of people in the country? What are they going to choose? That is going to ultimately affect how supply and demand alter, right? So I think the first step towards veganism, if we are trying to implement veganism, like, actively speaking, we ought to make them at least equal in value than like non-vegan options, so that whether or not you pick soy milk is a matter of your choice rather than a monetary thing. And then you can put education and influence through media, through different ways, to change the minds of people, and that can happen. Or an even easier option would be to simply make vegan uh, products cheaper. The moment you make vegan milk 45 rupees as compared to regular milk 65 rupees, you wouldn't even need to convince anyone. The society itself will change.
Yes.
And so I think
Uh,
it's sort of a problem of elites. As with pollution, as with everything else, it's a matter of the people who are actually holding the power, uh, putting the responsibility on the general masses of moralistic change.
so I think rather than a philosophical, it's an economic problem.
Yeah.
But let's now look at, have we finished our list of ethical frameworks?
Let me check.
Is there anything like, what do you think is another good ethical theory?
Let me check. Let me check.
Let's talk about error. No, I have talked about error theory, right?
I think
Um,
more or less, other than we've talked about everything. We talked about contractualism. Yes, we talked about utilitarianism. We've talked about ethics in general. Meta ethics we've done. Deontology we've done. Emotivism we've done. Realism also we've done, and error theory also we're sort of done. Let's do one thing. So this could be the overview of ethics, and I can divide this also into a vegan discussion that we had. So I can have two different discussions from this, and
hmm.
because it's gone on for very long, the recording is how long? It's already like close to 2 hours long. So maybe we can uh, do another discussion right after this whenever you're
So
free.
you want?
Yeah, I think 2 hours is more than enough because I'll have to sort and edit this also. I have a lot of discussions. Does that work?
Hmm.
Or
So we can just
yeah,
conclude.
I
Yes,
think
sir.
if you have any more thing about ethics, like we can have a short meet at any time, right? If it's like half an hour, 45 minutes, I can take time out easily. And if there are like more topics also, because I think meta philosophy is very interesting, whether it's ethics or something else.
Yes, it actually goes to the core. Uh, and yes, it's interesting. Rather, let's just conclude now and just finish it off.
Yes.
Um, so we talked about utilitarianism. It was just the maximum good for maximum number of people, but it actually fails for quite a number of, and it is counterintuitive. Rather than failing, we can say that it is not adaptable for many of people,
Yes.
and therefore it can be discarded. There are other theories like error theory, which basically says that because morals, if objectively existed, they would be very weird and they would be very queer,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore because morals don't exist objectively, or so error theory is that basically all that we talk of morals is false. It is completely false, and we just have to pretend as if it were to be true. Now, again, the question in this was not about philosophical strength or soundness. It was about applicability. How many people were going to, digest that it was that what they're trying to be say as wrong and right was actually just illusion.
Mm-hmm.
So that was again about adaptability. Then we talked about ethical emotivism, and I think that was something that
We both agreed upon. So
most of the things are based upon
yeah,
that,
the
and
meta
so
ethical
that's the
standard.
just conclusively the thing.
Yes, so the meta ethical standard that we agreed upon was emotivism. That is where ethics stem from. And then the normative ethical standard we agreed upon was contractualism. So, what we think is the most reasonable
Contractualism, yes.
way, it was contractualism, right? The
Yes,
yeah.
contractualism.
So the so the standard that we think we operate by is emotivism, and the uh, ethical standard we should follow in order to create ethics which are normatively followable is contractualism. So this could be the conclusion of the ethics as we understand it right now within society, what it is and what it should be.
Yes, and contractualism, of course, it was good enough to define everything and have other problems sorted out. And rather, it was a beautiful discussion because I got to revise myself all things which I almost forgot. So it
This
was
was,
good, I think.
yeah, definitely
Deontology and everything.
fun. So,
Emotivist, and so I like to call it emotivist contractualism. So that is hand in hand. The baseline is emotivism. Upon that, everything is built.
To conclude, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you end up choosing. Just as we did in this discussion, you have to be thorough. This discussion or any discussion on the channel is not supposed to tell you what to think, but rather to showcase you an example on how to think. Think, question, and keep seeing patterns, because patterns, they're everywhere.